like 3 acres total, and the course had, I believe, I don't know, 22 switchbacks, like 22 180s in the course. Like I didn't know how terrible it was until I wrote it. And I wrote it, and I was like, who built this? This is so bad. But it was already race day, so we just raced it.
Yeah, there's not much you can do.
Mm-mm.
Maybe take away one of the switchbacks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the next year I like managed to smooth it out a little bit. But
yeah, you learn as you go. Yeah. Well, let's get rolling. All right, so I'll pretend like we'll do an introduction. So I'm Jed Kornbluh. I'm the executive director from the Connecticut Cycling Advancement Program, and tonight we've got Colin Reuter from Cross Results. He's going to demystify and explain everything. So if you're watching, great. Send us some questions. If you're watching the YouTube section of this after we rebroadcast it, drop your questions into the comments, and we'll get them over to Colin so that he can answer.
I love the YouTube comment section.
Yeah, YouTube comments that's the top. That's the top for all.
I'd like to thank you for pronouncing my name correctly too. That was nice.
Yeah,
never a gimme.
Look, my last name gets butchered on a daily basis, so I know what it's like. Kornbluh. Yeah. So, how did we get here? How did you come about to create Cross Results?
The Cross Results origin story.
Yeah,
I love this because it's like a low-key burn on USA Cycling. So back in 2006, I moved to Massachusetts and I started racing bikes. And I actually raced mountain bikes, and people were like, "Are you gonna race cyclocross?" And I was like, "What is cyclocross?" But like after the 5th time, someone asked me in a mountain bike race, "Hey, are you gonna race cyclocross?" I was like, "I guess I am gonna race cyclocross." So I checked out this new sport called cyclocross, and it was really fun. And after a while, I started doing okay, and I went to usacycling.org to request an upgrade to Cat 3. And there was like a link where it said like race history, and I was like, "Oh, of course, it's 2006 now. Everything's on the internet." So when I click race history, it's going to show me everything I've been doing this fall. Because like I've been looking at results, the results were on Bike Reg, like, oh, they're in a database. And I clicked it, and there was like no data. And I was like, wait, what? And then it was like a very special time in my life where I had lots of free time and energy. And I was like, well, wait, if there's no database of bike race results, I could just make one. So I just made one. And here we are. I guess at this point, 13 years later. But yeah, it was,
You saw a need.
Yeah,
personal need.
The need was that I wanted a database of my results.
Right.
So, and I actually, not to get too deep into my life, but I had just left a video game development job where working 70 hours a week was normal. So I was currently working 40 hours a week, and I was like, well, I'm used to working on the weekends anyway. So it was a good time where I was like, oh yeah, I'll just write code Saturday and Sunday because that's normal. And now I'm like, no, Saturday and Sunday for bike riding. But at that time, I was like full of programming energy, so we just made a website.
And how quickly was it adopted by riders?
I would say like in the first year, it went a little viral. It was one of those things where like kind of no one knew about it for the first couple months, and like I would like talk about it on my blog. Remember back when people wrote blogs?
Oh yeah.
The first time it like got some traction was someone having a results database made it easier to like make it clear who was sandbagging. That's the thing. Like people always care about sandbagging a lot. So like the first breakthrough was someone made an eBay auction for unused upgrade points.
I remember this.
Yeah, exactly. And the reference they used was the Cross Results profiles of all these guys that had like 30 or more upgrade points, but were still Cat 3s because they were annoyed. And that's like I remember looking at like the web traffic that day, and I was like, oh wow, something happened.
And you had to track back.
Right, and then I'm like, oh, it's coming from this eBay auction, and then like I don't know, that exposed a lot of the New England community, especially the like people that cared about cross a lot.
See, today that would have ended up on Reddit, and you would have known about it immediately.
Exactly, right? Like it was a simpler time, so we only had eBay and blogs to make things go viral. But yeah, that was the breakthrough. And then I think 2 years in, maybe Minuteman Road Club emailed me and was like, "What if we staged a race by those made-up ranking points that you're using?" And I was like, "That's a bold move, but okay." And they did it, and it worked okay-ish. And that was kind of the beginning of becoming like an actual sanctioning body. You know, like it's like we're not a. I'm not. It's not a sanctioning body, but it kind of is because.
But you're the trusted method. Before that,
yeah, exactly. Like we're legitimizing results, and then it affects how races are run. So we're not a sanctioning body.
So I've only been in New England for 4 years now. Before that, I was in the Mid Atlantic, and we would use the Max Series points prior to cross results. And if you skipped a season, you had no points for the prior year, so you'd end up the top 30 or 40 riders would end up getting call-ups, and then you'd have to scrum based on registration orders. So back then, everyone would scramble to register as quickly as they could as soon as registration opened. I think cross results, in a way, has shifted that a little bit. Now we're seeing riders register at the very last minute. Have you noticed that change with your races?
I mean, I'm a little bit lucky in that some of my races sell out. So once there's like a sellout chance in play, people can't play that like wait till the last second game. Well, yeah, I never set out to like change the way the workflows go, but definitely changing from the registration order staging to cross result staging meant that it definitely took away one of the incentives the racers had. I remember my first season racing the Verge series, at 12:01 noon, registering for Northampton and getting into like the third row and being like, oh, this is my big chance, third row, right. No excuses, third row. And now that's more or less gone because unless a race sells out fast, like Gloucester, rest in peace. Yeah, now you have like fairer staging, so it's good for the racers, but it's not good for promoters. I didn't mean for that to happen, but it totally happened.
Well, I think what's great for us from the promoter standpoint is I just pull up Race Predictor and I'm able to stage my race.
Right. I mean, there's the way you definitely don't have to deal with like 100 people fighting for the front row or
right.
Yeah. Because before Reg Order, there was like scrum staging where it was literally the first person to get there. So people would like have their trainer on the start line half an hour before the race. Like the start grid was just never empty.
It wasn't a grid. It was a blob.
Yeah, exactly. You just camped out. It was like Black Friday at Best Buy.
Yeah, I can. Thinking back to packed starts at like Providence, where people would just cram in. It's crazy. So, Thank you for making this easier for the rest of us.
It's a quality of life improvement, definitely for participants, I think.
Yeah, I do love walking to the start line. If I forget to, I never forget to have that paper in my pocket. But if I do, I've got my phone out and I can just pull it up on the website. So all the improvements that you've made, I guess we'll get to all the widgets that you've added to the website to make it easier. It's great for the riders, but it's even better for a race promoter and for an organization like ours. It just makes life a lot easier.
Cool.
Yeah. So USA Cycling tried to have their own ranking system when they also tried to have their own registration system, but now they're using yours. So how did that come about?
Right. Yeah. So I have a long history of relationship with USA Cycling. Like I said, I mean, 13 years ago, their website is like I made cross results because of their website. Yeah. So for a while, back in the pre-2010, we'll say, their results websites gave points based on performance, but it was just cumulative, right? So if you raced a lot, you just got more points, So if you ever looked at like any ranking that USA Cycling did, it was kind of just like a report on who raced the most. So once the cross results points list started to get like kind of noticed across the country, it was like, oh, this list is actually somewhat representative of people's ability, as opposed to the USA Cycling rankings, which kind of just reward participation. So, USA Cycling's not idiots. So they were like, oh, this system is better and more representative. So let's see, around 2011, they had a conversation with me about buying the site. And basically what they said was, either you're going to sell it to us or we're going to start copying your stuff. And like, I mean, the way, like, it's not rocket science. There's nothing nothing I do could be counted as like super unique intellectual property. Like, to be honest, the system is a modified version of how like international skiing rankings are done. It's not like I made this up. So anyway, they were like, sell it or we're just going to copy you. And they made me an offer, and then Bike Reg made me a better offer. And the people at Bike Reg are like cool and local. So I ended up selling it to Bike Reg and working for Bike Reg. So, and then USA Cycling copied it. And now they're like, honestly, They're pretty similar. There's a few differences because I think I think they take top 3 from the last 12 months, whereas we take top 5 from your last 10. So the cross results system is like definitely more responsive, where if you race a lot, if you've been sucking in the last month and raced a lot, it's going to kill your ranking. Whereas USA Cycling is like, well, you were good 11 months ago, so you might still be good. And for maybe for staging nationals, their system makes more sense. But from an actual week to week, who's going well, cross results tends to adapt a little faster, so it's better on that front.
Right. I think it's probably better for your average local racer, your masters racer, your junior racer who's showing up week after week, and they want to see how they stack up against their competition.
Yeah, the goal with the cross results was never to make a national ranking system that would affect staging at nationals. I actually think USA Cycling system works quite well for their needs. But for me, I was I just want to do this fast right now. I don't if I was more of a math nerd than I am, I would have set it up so that your most recent results are weighted more heavily than your old results, blah blah blah, and then something regression, things like that. But instead, you do get your best 5. It's what is it, 5 of your last 10, even if that was 11 months ago. And let's be honest, 11 months ago, I was probably a lot fitter than I am right now. It's not that indicative of who I am.
I think that goes for a lot of people, especially without racing. I mean, we haven't even touched on the fact that coronavirus has torpedoed a lot of people's hopes and dreams for this year.
Exactly. I know they think great. My top end is terrible.
Yeah, I struggled on a ride today. I tried to sneak out at lunch for a quick hour, and it was a slow hour. Yeah.
You don't have to admit that. No one needs to know.
Well, you know what? I'm an open book here.
All right.
It is a webinar.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean this is a bike reg and a cross results sort of point that there was an article put out by Bicycling Magazine a couple of days ago about the loss of, what are we operating at, 14% right now, and with 14% of normal racing is happening right now during cross season.
Interesting. So yeah, I have top secret insight into bike reg that I probably am not allowed to fully expound on. I will tell you that cross results traffic is down about 80%. So a normal Monday, we would see about 4,000 unique visitors, and this year it's 600. So I would totally believe you that cyclocross racing is down to 14%.
I think it was 14%. Wild. Yeah.
Okay.
It was actually a quote from Stuart. So
okay.
I'll pull it up and send it over to you. But
you would know. I will say that the outside of cyclocross, cycling as a whole is definitely down to 14%. Because if it was, bike reg would have gone out of business, and I would not be here. Well, I'd be here, but I would not have access to something. Yeah, there are events going on, but cyclocross, is big groups of people and in specific locations, which is probably a little harder to get approved than certain Fondo type things and other thing.
And virtual events where people are sort of self-staging or they're running. So there have been a variety of different approaches to this season. I know we shrunk our grid from 8 to 6, and we're spacing riders out. So we're basically doing rider and then sort of a half row and then rider for our start grid. So the start grid is massive now. Everyone's masked until we give them the 30 seconds to go, whatever. But I know that there are other event promoters out there that are doing time trial style events. They're doing heats, so they've got small waves, sort of BMX style. Just your personal opinion. Do you think this is, if this continues, and it likely will, because there seems to be no end in sight right now.
Right.
How do you see this evolving the sport? And do you see cross results as having some hand in how we can stage sort of different styles of racing?
I think, as far as evolving the sport, cyclocross is a fairly socially distant activity. If you think about I don't know, but maybe you're a really good cross racer and you draft a big group of people for the whole race. But basically, after a lap, I often find myself riding a time trial. So I think that I think cyclocross is a fairly viable activity during COVID. The problem is that it's such a niche that convincing your local health department that it's safe is hard because like people don't know what it is. Like it's got to be safer than reopening like indoor gyms, like spin classes or indoor dining, or like basically, take anything that involves groups of people indoors, and like that's got to be worse than what we do. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So, and right, I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm just a guy that promotes bike races. So yeah, like clearly I have some motivated reasoning in my beliefs.
Yeah, but you're a data guy and you watch trends, right? And
I mean, I haven't. I'm waiting for like the super spreader event that happened outdoors, and I feel like I'm waiting for that data.
I hope it's not a bike race.
Exactly.
And I don't think it will be based on our community. I think our community has been really good. I know a lot of folks in Massachusetts have been really great, and I'm seeing social media posts from around the country where cyclists are being fairly conscientious.
Right, and I think when you go to promote an event, it's actually in many ways it's easier to have an event that's responsible than just gatherings, right? Like if I have an event and I'm like, these are the rules, you want to come to my event, you play by the rules. It's like, I think, and you've seen this too, like getting people to wear masks until the race starts and then wear masks after the race. Like people will play by the rules because they want to do the thing you're promoting. Whereas when you have a loosely organized gathering of an unknown number of people, like there's no one in charge, there's no rules, like everyone kind of just goes with the flow of like what's the social vibe of like how prudent we should be. So I think bike racing events are fairly safe to put on, but the problem is the optics, and that's a thing that like I think we're still trying to figure out. I'm really psyched that like CCAP's been able to run stuff. But I guess so for how is it going to evolve cyclocross? I think the answer is that it's not going to change anything. Cyclocross, you start off riding in a group, and then it rapidly becomes small groups and TTs, and none of those things are notably unsafe. Like I think for the most part, you can run a cyclocross event with maybe a smaller field limit than we used to have, and maybe a more socially distant start, and then it plays out just like a normal cross race. So, like I think cross is actually like a great race format.
Yeah, the only thing really missing are the occasional throngs of fans,
right?
The team tents, the beer.
Right. I mean, you can drink beer by yourself. I mean, not that I would know anything about that. I don't think but yeah, right. As long as you it's a problem if you wanted to do registration indoors or you wanted to have a big indoor space. If your event operated around indoor space, that was a problem. So like USA Cycling canceling nationals, that makes perfect sense. Because you're trying to bring people from across the country somewhere in December, trying to do big stuff, do your podiums inside, like all that is too high risk, right? But like if a bunch of us drive 50 miles and then meet in a field and then ride around in circles, like that's very easy to do that in a way that's pretty safe.
Yeah, and we had a lot of discussion in the summertime when we were getting our Tuesday night crit series going again. We had 4 races. Do we limit our fields to just Connecticut, just New England? Obviously we weren't allowing any state residents in who were coming from states that had a high level of COVID. But we had folks driving up from New York, down from Massachusetts. It was we had strict field limits, so that sort of limited anybody outside of our community from getting in, and I feel like it worked. But I think USA Cycling was fairly prudent in canceling nationals when they did.
Right. I mean, just traveling across the country and staying somewhere and doing all this stuff in groups inside, like that's a lot riskier than like let's ride fast outside.
Right.
Like when you're sitting in a crit and you're going 25, like there's a lot of ventilation going on. If there's anything we know about COVID, it's that it's aerosol based, so ventilation is pretty huge. So I'm not an epidemiologist, disclaimer, but I'm not very concerned about drafting someone even if they have COVID.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Compared to like walking inside and like eating dinner one table away from them, that seems way worse to me.
Yeah, and we can keep going down the COVID conversation. That's I feel like there's an opportunity here for Niebuhr to host something or at least to have a segment of the promoter summit that we normally have in January to talk about this and talk about how what safety measures took place in 2020 and how can we evolve into 2021.
Yeah, I feel like it's primarily it's a PR thing between race promoters and towns, and also like, you got to want to do the work, and this is a hard time to like want to do the work on that front. I think like, CCAP being a professional organization, you guys, are spending, you have people spending 8 hours a day on payroll. Like your job is to make cycling happen, and that's great. I wish we had more professional organizations like that. But then all your hobby promoters, which are admittedly people like me, it's like, do I want to try to convince Ski Board in the town of Shrewsbury that an outdoor gathering is safe and appropriate? I'm like, maybe we'll just do it next year, So
the juice is not worth the squeeze at this point for a promoter that's got to do a personal investment. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, and then depending on what state you're in, outdoor gathering limits get pretty hard to navigate. I think Connecticut you guys have like 500 or something that's like very workable, whereas in Mass it's like 100. So then it's like, how do you run a cross race with a field limit of 100, or do you want to do like 2 waves? So we discussed how we could do ice weasels for a while, trying to do like a morning group of 100 and then an afternoon group of 100, and like what we could do to stay within the rules, because we're concerned for sure about being compliant.
So would you divide those heats up based on their cross results score? Is that how you do it, or would
we had discussed that? There's a lot of ways to do it. I think people, like, even though I invented cross results, there's a lot of other ways to like slice your participants up that I think is equally fulfilling to them.
Such as,
obviously, obviously gender is a pretty useful one. Women typically prefer to race other women instead of just getting thrown in with the men. Even if they have the same cross results points, it's a mystery why. And also, juniors, right? Like, kids don't love racing with adults, even if I'm like, oh, you're the same speed, you guys should just line up together. So that there's definitely a way we could do like an A and a B, general field based on cross results points, and then like maybe a women's open, maybe a junior race. Lots of there's and then honestly masters too, like, not that you or I are old guys or ever will be old guys, but sometimes gentlemen of a certain age prefer to compete with their peers, even if they're the same speed as younger people. So there's lots of ways to slice it, and we never got to the point of, well, how are we going to slice it? Because it was more just like, let's just let this one go for this year, with the current uptick in cases in Massachusetts, it's like, we didn't feel good about trying to convince the town that we could do it, even though I'm personally very confident that like we could have run modestly sized ice weasels with absolutely no increase in COVID cases in Massachusetts. But
yeah, it can be done, and I certainly understand people's reservations about it. But as you said, we're doing this as our 9 to 5 for our
totally
our 24. So
exactly.
Yeah. Well, so without cross racing, or at least without any cross racing outside of here and a few other spots around the country, do you see, like, so there's this thing called Zwift. Have you heard of Zwift?
What is this Zwift you speak of? Yeah.
So the Zwift Power rankings are fascinating.
It might even be cross result inspired. I think they might even use some terminology.
Yeah. So I was curious about that, because I don't really Zwift race. I don't enjoy it. Zwift for me is sort of a means to an end. I like riding on Zwift. I don't like racing on Zwift.
Right.
But to race on Zwift, you need to be registered with Zwift Power so that you actually have a ranking system. And you're right. Yeah, their ranking system does look a lot like yours. So are you racing on Zwift, and have you used Zwift Power?
I'm not a Zwift racer. My problem is I grew up as a Nordic skier, and I do a lot of indoor rock climbing. So I have other outlets for when the snow falls. This year it could be different though, because I didn't get to race my bike for like the last 9 months. Usually by the time we get to the end of November, I'm just like, I have pedaled hard so many times this year. I do not need to pedal hard on a trainer and watch an animated version of myself go slowly. This could be the year of Zwift for sure. Shoot, what was the question?
I'll pull it back. I'll I'll pull it back up. It was.
Yeah,
it's one that I want to get to.
Yeah, I don't Zwift race. But like Zwift racing is huge and it's not going anywhere. Man, Zwift is going to be. It's not the future of the sport. It's like a different branch of the sport.
Yeah, well, esports is
yeah.
It's sort of the future, but they are sports.
Yeah.
I don't see Zwift replacing. I don't see esports cycling replacing real cycling.
This is it's a gamified version of making power. Like it is interesting. I think they should make Zwift more video gamey, not less. You know, like I think the more you can make Zwift a skill set other than pedaling hard, the more compelling it becomes. You know, like people don't watch Compu Trainer time trials because it's not that exciting. You know, it's just like who makes power. So yeah, I think Zwift is huge, but I think there should be more power ups. There should be more weird stuff. You know, people love esports, and it's cool.
So Zwift should be more like Mario Kart.
Totally. No, like you're joking, but you shouldn't be joking. If I was trying to make a real indoor racing league, you know, I want it to be 50% power and 50% strategy, right? Like strategy is interesting. Power is very predictable. You know, like if bike racing in New England was just a power test, like the same three guys would win every race. And it wouldn't be that exciting.
Isn't that how it is?
That's kind of how it is right now anyway. Yeah, Ben Wolf is here.
I don't know, is Ben here? Let's see. No.
Okay.
We'll have to scold him.
Yeah, anyway, but exactly. You know, but I think Zwift has a lot of potential to blend fitness with video gaming. And also that bleeds into actual bike racing. You know, like pedaling hard indoors is kind of fun. Pedaling hard outdoors is more rewarding, I would say.
Oh, it is. There's so many more interesting variables for riding outside. Although, you know, there's plenty of add-ons that you can drop into Zwift to make it worthwhile. Like, you know, using Discord to talk to your teammates, having more fans going, having a trainer that gives real feedback. Yep. You know, I'm not going to name brands, but there's tons of trainers out there that give actual real-time feedback when you're riding. So they're getting better every year. Yeah,
it's not. Yeah, I said already, but like it's not the future of bike racing, but it is a future of bike racing for sure. And I think every winter is going to be more about Zwift season every year.
Well, yeah, and this year, you know, Zwift season stretched into May. Heck, we were hosting our Tuesday night crit on Zwift until we were actually given a go ahead by the governor's executive order to host racing again. And it worked. We sort of figured out the bugs. I will be interested to see how this evolves with, and we're really stretching into a Zwift conversation here with their big investment from KKR and how that's going to change their hardware battle with companies like Peloton and Echelon and some of their other peers.
Right. Yeah. Hardware is going to be really important as things become as it becomes more and more legitimized. I mean, hacking, like the bigger it gets, the more people are going to try to cheat too. So that's going to be quite interesting to see what Zwift can do to legitimize their environment. I mean, I have a background in video games because I am a computer programmer. So I know all about how many hackers there are in online gaming and how many years it took games to properly deal with hacking issues to make esports legit. So I think there'll be the exact same issue with Zwift.
Have there been it seems like so silly, but has anybody tried to hack cross results and update, change their scoring?
In a sense, so we have the ability to combine racers, right? And I have to monitor that because you can always combine yourself with Sven Nys, or I guess Mimicry Vanderpool at this point, right? You're like sometimes Jed misspells his name as Wout Van Aert, so I'll just fix that. And look, he's a lot better than he used to be.
Wow, I actually got below 260. That'll be great.
Exactly,
or below 360 actually.
His staging is amazing, Jed Vanderpool. But this is where the community comes in, where people this. If you did that, I would get an email within 24 hours where someone's like, "This is not Jed's results. This is not who Jed is." Someone combined Jed with Vanderpool, and then I'm like, "Oh my god, what the heck?" And I go in and unlink it, right? So yes, it has happened before, and we've fixed it. If it became an epidemic, I'd probably have to put a review process in. So every time someone says that Vanderpool's a misspelling of Kornbluh, I'd be like, "No, it's not." But once again, like we're still at the level of like a fairly small community where like no one's tried that. Or like it's not like it happens enough where I have to like really develop a solution.
Well,
but now that I said it on a webinar, it probably will. So
yeah, get ready, everybody.
Yeah.
Have you? So what regions are using this the most? Is it mostly New England, Mid-Atlantic, or is it stretching?
Right. So it started on the East Coast, and our original data source was the text files that would get posted to Bike Reg back in like 2006. So that really meant New England and Mid-Atlantic was the original. That's the oldest. Back around 2010 though, like I made a real effort to try to get like fully nationwide because I love cross and it was fun to post results and I wanted to get better data. So it pretty much spans the whole country at this point. It's always had the biggest foothold in on the East Coast because those are bike reg regions as well as cross results. So the whole East Coast was staging by it, and that gives it certainly a legitimacy that you might not have when you're off in the boonies, like Montana cyclocross. So definitely strongest in the East Coast. But I mean, if you look at the inbox these days, it's like very nationwide. Pretty much the only region that isn't too engaged is Oregon, and I mean that makes sense because ironically, right, Obra is not USA Cycling, and in 2006, Obra had a decent website of results. Like they've had a results database that is good for longer than Cross Results has existed. So the people out in Oberland just look at Obra.org to find out stuff, and like they don't stage by it, they don't use Bike Reg, So there's never been a big reason for like the Oregonians to get too deep into Cross Results.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite region that is surprisingly engaged is Australia.
Really? How big is it? What's their scene like?
It's solid. I mean, because of COVID, they might have like the best cross scene on Cross Results right now. And it's funny because it happens in summer too,
right.
Because of the hemispheres. But what happened was, I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago, some guys from Australia came to Holy Week and they raced in New England a whole bunch. And they were, they went to line up. They were like, wait, why am I lining up at the back on the first day? And they're like, oh, well, you see, we have Cross Results in this country. And they were like, you have what? And yes, a couple dudes from Australia were like, oh, you have like a results database. That's cool. And they went back home and they started posting stuff. And apparently this was like the sweet spot in the Australian scene where it was growing rapidly, but didn't have like a good results aggregation system. So they started posting the Cross Results like 4 years ago. And I don't do anything. Like the Aussies just put their data up and then it's there. But they do it. So we have a whole Australian community.
How does that correlate to road results? The sister site.
There's no road results posting from Australia that I know of.
Huh? Maybe they haven't tuned into that yet.
I guess maybe the road scene has like the thing is without like this like staging and ranking means a little bit less on the road, so it doesn't have quite like the killer feature that really like draws people in. So.
But there are some features that I want to touch on that are much more personal, like your nemesis.
Right.
Looking at whether or not you finished your teammate, a teammate that they got up the road and maybe got into a break, or you finished in the bunch, you finished in a small group. Your teammate basically, I'm losing it. Like you basically gave an assist, more or less.
Right. I mean, the small bit of credit you can give yourself when you finish like down in 32nd in a crit. So like, dude, I wore the same jersey as the guy who won.
That's right.
But sometimes, I mean, I've done totally legitimate lead outs and then finished in the 30s, and I do appreciate a little credit for my sprinter who did okay. So
how did those features, did you sort of just add those ad hoc as people asked for them, or were these like bright ideas that you had? I think I should credit. I think that's probably from me and Ryan Kelly discussing it back in 2009. So Cross Results started, and then in 2009, Ryan was like, you should make road results. And I was like, I don't care about road racing. Road racing is dumb. And he's like, well, I'll upload the data if you make the website. So I was like, all right. If I only have to make the website and not maintain it, we'll do that. So I made the website, and then I think we were having conversations about like, well, what else can we do with road results that we don't have with cross? So we got into some conversations about like the way groups develop and team credit. Like on cross results, if your teammate wins, like you don't get anything. Like let's be honest. Once the race starts, you're trying to kill your teammate. Like you're not helping him, right?
Because it's cross. But like on the road, it's different. Then you're like, I can't pull. I got a guy in a break.
Well, you can always get, what I like about road results is that I can go back and look at a race from 2 years ago, and I can sort of pick out, I can remember what happened just sort of based on those icons. So the iconography is really good, and it's very helpful, jogging an old memory.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I appreciate it, and I know other people do as well.
Totally.
What is the most popular feature on the cross results page?
I mean, I think without question, it's the race predictor. Which is funny because in a way it almost takes some of the suspense out of the race. That you can look at you're like, I could probably do all right today, and then you look at the predictor and you're like, no, I'm probably about 14th today, and then you race and you're like, I was somewhere between 11th and 17th. But people love it because it affects their staging, and it's also like you're really accurate, especially especially when everybody in the race has like a fair background of data. So we get definitely like the predictor probably drives the most user engagement and feedback, because if people go to the predictor and like something's wrong, like if they're predicted lower than they should be because of some bug with results, they're like, wait a minute, the website says I'm 12th, I should be 10th. This is important to the email.
So how many of those emails do you get on a Monday morning? Is that most of your inbox?
So this is great. You warned me this would be a question, and I don't know anymore because the amazing Bike Reg customer service team is the first line of defense for the cross results inbox.
Oh, good for you.
But
that's
to
good.
give you an idea of the cross results inbox, we had to develop a line of defense because it was like Colin was spending way too much of his time working at Bike Reg answering cross results emails. So I asked them, and they said in 2019 a normal week was 30 to 45 emails. Monday they said was like 15 to 25. So it's not just Monday because cross doesn't happen until Saturday. So you have a whole week to look at the internet and look at numbers and think about stuff that could be wrong. And then you get to Thursday, you start worrying about staging for the next weekend, and that's another chance to go back in and look at numbers and ask questions. So the lovely folks in the Bike Reg customer service team answer 30 to 45 emails a week. And they only send me the hard ones when the question is more complicated than like something wrote. And then I have to write long explanations to people like you.
What's a real head scratcher that you've gotten?
I don't know about head scratchers. Like some people, there's a certain category of person who you might be familiar with, the junior parent. And it's more that like if they have a disagreement with something, they aren't always as amenable to the first explanation. So there's and it becomes questions that don't have answers. Like the answers are no longer about math, they're more about like, what is your ethos of running this website? And those are hard because it becomes like a conversation with someone who's very invested. So there's been one of the things that's been tough is over the years, some parents think that scoring girls and boys separately is the way to go. And other parents think that they should be scored together so that the girls get better points. Because is it about points or is it about results? And, this is one of those discussions that I never thought I would be in the middle of when I started making a results website. And people are very passionate about their children. So
yeah,
those are some of the stickier emails I've gotten when it's like, this isn't fair that you do it this way, and I'm kind of fired up. And I'm like, I didn't mean to do this, and I'm not sure staging matters as much as you think it does, but you can't just say that. So
but it does. It honestly,
hardest emails are not about math. They're about
they're about emotion. They're emotional issues.
They're about communication. Totally.
Right,
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing that has been an issue is the doping needle.
Oh yeah.
That we put on some people.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. If you've tested positive, we may or may not put a doping needle next to your name. And that was one of those things that started off as like back when the site was less professional and it was it was kind of just fan service, right? Because like we don't like dopers. Like I think can I say that dopers suck? Like is that
absolutely?
We're
not into doping over here. Yeah.
No, but it gets kind of gray, and like next thing you know, you get emails about it, and you got people arguing that they've paid their debts to society and they shouldn't have that there, and then it becomes a lot more complicated than you ever thought it would be. Let's just put it that way.
So
and then you've got
so
someone like
it's still there. You're gonna leave it up because it seems like
right now we have the needles. I think I don't know. I don't want to get too deep into it, but let's just say that it's not straightforward to just say like, oh well, someone's been suspended for doping in their career, so we put Cycon next to them. I mean, I don't have time to go to court, So if you email me and threaten to take me to court, I will absolutely take that needle off your name. It's not worth it.
So the needle serves as an asterisk.
Right.
Fair warning.
I mean, those of us that have never taken performance-enhancing drugs think it makes sense. But those of us that have a more complicated perspective on that front, or maybe are good friends with someone that did take drugs a very long time ago, might feel like it's unfair. And I completely understand that perspective, and like that's where it's gotten complicated. And I never thought that would happen.
Right. Someone who's more or less repaid their debt. They've been racing clean.
Yeah.
That's an ethical consideration that that's an argument that I think it's going to just continue throughout cycling.
Right.
Forever.
And I have my opinion on it, but like I am just one person, and like I don't own Cross Results anymore. Cross Results is owned by Bike Reg, and Bike Reg is a group of people, and like we discuss things. So it's not as simple as like, well, Colin just says dopers get the scarlet letter forever.
How big is your team over there right now?
Right now, I'm gonna say 8. I think.
Yeah.
If you count part-timers, it was 11, I think. And then a pandemic hit, and as you know, it became problematic to run large events during the pandemic, and that is the business that we serve. So it created some cash flow issues. So there's been some furloughs, and we're hoping to bring people back as business recovers.
Well, let's hope.
So
let's hope.
Register early, register often, my friend.
But just don't register as Sven Nice.
You can. I don't care. I need your service fee. I'll fix the data later.
I was curious about we're talking about sort of features of the site, the upgrade points section. I assume that was often a point of contention with people because they, folks will scroll through, they'll see that somebody has, a million upgrade points. I think you and I talked about this back and forth via email.
Oh yeah. You're probably one of those guys in my box back in the day.
Possibly.
But yeah. So yeah, upgrade points is funny because it's one of those things where you say to yourself like, oh, you got a database, you should just be able to like run a query and get everybody's upgrade points. Like, why doesn't USA Cycling do this? And I built some like upgrade point features. I did it for JD when he was the administrator of Nibra, trying to build better tools. But it's funny because the deeper you get into trying to get upgrade points, the more you realize why USA Cycling doesn't have like just an upgrade points calculator, So you do like a 4-5, let's say you do a 4-5 crit, and then so do the Cat 4s get upgrade points based on just the Cat 4s they beat or the 4-5 racers they beat? Like that's one of those things, like it's already like that's not that well defined in the rule book. Then how do I know who's a Cat 5 versus who's a Cat 4? If a Cat 5 beats a Cat 4, do they get points, right? Like if you get beat points ahead of you, does that count? Then you have results where there's like a combined field, right? Where the results were posted as like 3-4, but they did a separate 4 podium, and then like should the results get split, or like, oh, we ran masters along with the 1-2-3s, but then we combine the results, should the masters get their own points? Wait a minute, are masters upgrade points even a thing? Can I upgrade off masters racing? What about categorize? What if it's a masters 4-5 race, right? A masters 1-2-3 versus a masters 4-5. Like it's one of those things where like, oh, just translate the rule book into like the database. It sounds like such a great idea. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, wow, this is a mess, right? And then you got 14-year-olds winning Cub Junior races. Well, how many upgrade points do you get for winning a Cub Junior race? What if you're a 14-year-old boy beating 9-year-old girls? Like, should that count for field size?
Right.
There's all this discretion that goes into upgrades. And people are like, well, it's, discretion's dumb. Like, I just want an algorithm. And it's like, well, like racing's actually pretty complicated. And that's why just do the upgrade points math isn't as straightforward as it should be.
Yeah, that's why it takes. Yeah, sorry. That being said.
Oh, I mean, so that being said, like I've done my best to make the points representative and give people information, but there's like this huge asterisk of like, there's a lot of complexity here. Like just because cross results gives you a number doesn't mean that number is real. So you should like look and think instead of just seeing like this guy has 70 upgrade points, like the sky is falling.
So it's more of a tool for the individual rider rather than their rivals looking at where they stand.
Yeah, like using it to look at your own points and then to think critically about like your points and then check it against the rules and think about like, oh, wait a minute, cross results is giving me points for a training race that wasn't sanctioned. Like that doesn't count, stuff like that. It's a good starting point and it's useful, but like treating it as a reason to get your pitchfork out without doing a little more critical thinking is not ideal. I've tried to add disclaimers to keep that from happening because like, I don't know. I don't want people being. I think like people running around calling each other sandbaggers is like not great for the sport, as much as it's a necessary evil at times.
Yeah, it's definitely not great. It's one of the more negative aspects of the sport, but I think that goes both ways.
Right.
People need to race their class, and others need to train harder.
There's or just accept that like bike racing is awesome even if you don't win. Like that's the thing. Yeah. That's what's always bothered me is I'm like, look, most people don't win all the time, So if you're here to win, you're not going to be around that long, So refocus it on competing and trying to like have your best personal performance, and you'll enjoy a lot more than showing up and being like, I'm here to win. Everybody who beats me should probably upgrade so I can win. Like there's definitely a certain.
I think that's what makes. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, there is a very small percentage of the population that likes to come up with reasons why, like, the top 10 guys in every race should have upgraded. And that's not great. At the same time, there's probably the first guy in the guys winning the Gloucester 4-5 race, like, definitely should upgrade. So they're not wrong, but at the same time, like, definitely some people take it too far, and cross results can be a tool for taking it too far, where they're like looking at
I think colloquially the most popular feature among my friends with cross results is being able to figure out who your enemies are and your victims, and that's right. I've had now I think we're going into season 3 of this rivalry with my friend Eric, and we just try to destroy each other every cross race. And I'm not racing this year.
You're going to do it anyway, and now you have the data.
And now we have the data, so I can say, I beat you 3 times out of 4. It's your turn.
Yeah, I think it shows you. There's also, if you ever look at, I think there's like a head-to-head all-time feature, or like most common opponents. And that's like more of a deeper cut because it doesn't hit you in the face when you look at your profile. But I like that one because it gives me horrifying information. Like I've lined up against Adam Meyerson over 100 times and never beaten him.
Yeah, he doesn't get any older, does he?
Like the problem with being a New England scrub racer is like Adam does all the local 1-2-3s and all the UCI races, and I've been doing the same thing for like 7 years at this point, and I've literally never finished ahead of him.
But you're still here though. You're still racing.
3-0 against me. I know. There's other guys too. There's much better. There's much more gratifying stories of like my Mike Pierce that I've beaten. But my favorite part of that was I was like, oh, I can't believe like I've raced Adam 100 times and couldn't come up with a single win.
Were you at least chipping away during any particular season?
I'm not even getting closer. It's ridiculous. Like no, it's never happening. I'm gonna get old before he does.
Yeah, he doesn't age.
No, I'm not sure how it's possible, but like, yeah, I'm suffering the effects of aging much faster.
Good genetics. I don't know. Clean living.
Or trying hard. Right.
Trying really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. That thing where like I'm at my computer and he's like posting training rides. Like I think that could be a factor. I'm not sure though.
Maybe.
Also, I think he might have good coaching. I'm not sure.
Let me see. I'd like to open it up to questions. So if you've just joined us or if you're coming in, we've got a question that's sort of unrelated to cross results, but something that you might be able to give us some insight on. This actually comes from our friend Tony. Would you care to comment on what's happening or planned with the NIBRA given COVID and next year?
That's a good question for the president of NIBRA. Luckily, he's on this call.
Yeah.
I mean, so Nibra is not in a position really so because the vast majority of our promoters are volunteer promoters, we're not in a position to ask volunteers to bust their ass to put on bike races right now. So if you don't want to do it, like we can't make you. And it seems like the vast majority of promoters don't want to do it. And like I can't blame them, Like we talked about earlier in the call, we talked about like mass users gathering limits and stuff, and that kind of thing makes the financial implications of promoting a race like really tough. I think things are going better in Connecticut for bike racing, and I'm psyched that like CCAP's been leading the way on that. But honestly, until the pandemic situation changes, like until we get a vaccine and to the point where when there's more social approval around like putting on a bigger event, like Nibra is more or less on hold. We have, we like we let our administrator go because there was no bike racing happening. There was no work for JD to do, and unfortunately, like paying people money to do nothing is like not sustainable. So like we're hoping to spring back into action, but we really can't do that until promoters want to put races on. And we're not the kind of organization that's going to tell people they should. There's been different parts of the country where some local associations have been a little more forceful or shame oriented, shall we say, to promoters that said, I'm not doing it this year. And we've decided like very explicitly not to take that stance. So we think it's cool if you want to put a bike race on. We'd love to help you, but we're not going to tell them to do it. So I think like what drives the recovery of bike racing and like the re-involvement of Nibra with anything will be social factors around, pandemic as we hit a year or 2 years and vaccines,
So you think?
And I think it's very different. Go ahead.
I mean, you sort of. This is a crystal ball question, but like we're trying to predict what's going to happen in 5-6 months when hopefully road racing starts again, and we're likely going to be in the same position that we're in now. I think people are going to start relaxing a bit more, and as they do going into the end of the year, we'll see what happens.
Right. I think, the winter is going to be a big question mark. We've had a lot of talk about second wave issues, and, I don't know how the Connecticut graph is looking. Massachusetts graph not looking so good. And give us, 4 or 5 months indoors, and, we may be in a different state of lockdown, and I don't mean like a good state. So, it's the kind of stuff to play by ear, and when you're trying to plan events long term, playing it by ear sucks, Like you gotta get your permits in ahead of time. You gotta get your town approval. I hate to say it, but I think the 2021 road season is going to be vastly reduced. And I think I think we're mainly going to do low key events like the Rent, right? The Rent's it's a single venue. You do it as a training race. It's small, it's cheap, it's casual to the point where, so you don't have to put all this planning into something. If any given week, the town of Hartford says to you like, dude, COVID's out of control, you can't run your event. It doesn't ruin your life. You're just like, hey guys, no rent until further notice. But if you were doing, a big budget road event, let's say if we're doing
like the new
Crit, right?
Or like the New Haven Grand Prix, which we had to cancel this year.
There you go. Exactly. Right. That kind of stuff you've got to commit to ahead of time, and it's definitely a lot less comfortable to have it, be up in the air. And honestly, so many things are just up in the air and staying that way. It makes the uncertainty around race promotion makes it really tough. So I think the short-term future of bike racing is definitely smaller, more grassroots things. And I think the biggest, the discipline that's going to suffer the most on that front is road racing, because it's really hard. You can't do a grassroots road race or a grassroots crit, unless it's around a parking lot at a Rentzer field.
Well, it's possible that what we call training races now are just going to become the season. We're just going. Yeah. We're just they'll be crits, and we're gonna get back to, I'm a little older than you, and I grew up in the racing as a junior in the late '80s, early ’90s, and racing was sort of on a different wave back then. Junior fields are basically what they are now. If not bigger, but crits felt smaller. You had small crits. You had basically 2 races, 3 races every weekend, and some were what we would consider training races. Were actual legit weekend races. I would like to see more promoters pop up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, and I think in smaller events fit under, like, they're a lot easier to get approval from towns right now. Like in Massachusetts, we got our outdoor gathering limit of like 100. The training crit up in Montague, Massachusetts was 50 people tops. So it was, the whole thing happens outside. Registration was like at a table next to the jam van. There was one police officer. There's no reason you can't run that event safely during COVID. And I mean, it's completely compliant with all Massachusetts regulations, which many events aren't. So I think that's the short-term future, is going to be the small stuff and racing for the love of racing. And I mean, racing's still awesome, so people are still going to love it. And I think we can move forward that way. But big production stuff, like, it's not going to happen until we've got a vaccine and like beaten this thing. And
yeah,
if there's anything we've learned, it's you don't hold your breath. We've been on the cross front. We've been talking with the Ice People's promotion team. We're looking at like a more, we'll say, socially distant adventure ride type competition where, you're going to go, well, I shouldn't tip my hand too much, especially when we're still arguing about how it's going to work. But, what I want to do is I'm like, we're going to GPX mark a course that's, 2 to 3 hours starting from the Ice Weasels race venue on a bunch of like sweet mixed terrain riding. And we're going to say, do the race, post your entry to Strava, whoever goes the fastest wins, individual competition, team competition, stuff like that. And like, that is bike racing. It's not the same bike racing that we're used to, but it is like legitimately racing in a sense. It's more of a race than like, chasing a Strava segment when, no one, you and 4 of the people care about it. So
yeah. I think, well, the guys across the hall from us at CCNS did something similar. They did a time trial series where they had teams of, I think, 3 or 4 riders, and you could have some alternates, and you had your course and another team had their course, and you would basically ride tournament style throughout the season on these different courses, and whoever posted the best time was the winner that week. And it worked really well. It was quite popular. Yep.
So yeah, it's totally weird stuff that, a year ago we never would have thought like, this is what I care about. But like, I haven't pedaled hard with a number on in a long time, So at this point in my life, if I can go pedal hard for 2 hours on like in the woods with like a couple of my friends as like a team time trial, that sounds pretty sweet, So
that sounds pretty good to me. It sounds like what what the Jam Fund guys have been doing in East Hampton on the weekends.
Right. Like we're starting to do this stuff informally. I'm like, well, let's formalize it, and we've got Strava digitally tracking everything. It's not too hard to extract data. But I gotta stop talking about this because we're not. I don't know if we're really doing it. I don't know what the real rules are, and this is just one of the new forms of bike racing that might exist.
All right, so don't hold Colin to this if you're watching. And if this is way after the fact, then definitely hold Colin to this, because everything he said here is canon.
Yep. Yeah. Totally. Give me your money.
Yeah.
To do the thing.
If you have a race, I will be there. Either to quietly heckle and cheer, or to try and put a team together and race.
Yeah, you can't. You can heckle, but don't exhale too much while you do it.
No, I'll heckle into my jacket. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. No, actually, we finally come up with a use case. You know how like the megaphone heckler is like the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Right. Now you can actually justify it. You're like, well, I can't be near the course, but so I'm heckling you from a hillside near the course via this megaphone. COVID safe heckling.
Yeah, but no more vuvuzelas or trombones. Those are not allowed.
Exactly. No. Don't breathe in people's face while they race.
Yeah.
No. I was actually having that conversation with someone about Simon Yates getting COVID, right? And I was like, well, the poor guy is riding up hills as hard as he can while people scream in his face like all day long. And even though I think outdoor transmission is pretty unlikely, like I don't really want to ride past 10,000 Italians screaming in my face every day, see if I get COVID.
No, sounds terrible.
Mildly risky.
We could spend another hour talking about the Giro this week.
Italians.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have 10,000 Italians, even at Ice Weasels, so not without any
I'm sure we can make that happen, though.
We can get 10,000 townies, which is probably worse.
Yeah. Or different.
Sorry, better. I meant definitely better. They might even be Italian. It is Boston.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna any other questions to throw in the Q&A? Anybody before we wrap it up? Got a few attendees still hanging out. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody.
I've never looked at who attending.
Oh, Tony says in the absence of racing, he really enjoyed the discussion. So
it's good. Yeah, talking about bike racing is almost as fun as bike racing. So I enjoyed it too.
Well, I'll be here on Thursday night in my basement if you want to talk about how the Giro wrapped up.
Okay, we could just stay on and do like a full Giro breakdown afterward.
We could, yeah.
It'd be even less informed than this current.
Yeah, I don't think. We're going to start losing people if that happens.
That's good.
Yeah, or not. I don't know. Right. Well, yeah. Colin, thank you. This has been great. Hopefully we shine some light on cross results, and I think the conversation was good and rambling, and
totally.
It's just nice to catch up.
Yeah, for sure. I love talking about data and results and bike racing.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll see you at a CCAP event pretty soon.
Yeah, well, if you can get in, Mystic's going to open up on Monday to the general public, and we've got spaces in the A race, so come on down.
I am a member of the general public. That is true. Yep. And in times of my life, I've been fast enough to race the A race. So
you're fast enough. You're fine.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, it's been fun. All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Jeb.
Bye-bye.
Bye, CCAP.